The mother of three is jailed for murder tonight in Omaha.
For a shooting that happened a decade ago in central Iowa. In 2001, she told investigators that she shot a home invader.
Investigators believe the shooting was premeditated murder. Richter Roberts' family, including her brother, who's a police detective in Chicago, stand by her story that two intruders almost beat her to death.
We know what happened. We love her very much. She defended her family. How do you set that up? I mean, it just sounds ridiculous.
I've gone through every what if in my head and every possible scenario on how things maybe could have ended up differently. I do believe that you deserve justice. I really do. But I didn't murder your son.
Some people don't just lie. They become the lie. They study you. They watch what makes you lean forward in a conversation. What makes your face soften? What fear you're carrying that you haven't told anyone about? And then, quietly, methodically, they rebuild themselves from the ground up to match it perfectly. The hobbies you love become their hobbies. The values you hold become their values. The wound you've been nursing in private becomes the wound they claim to share. We call these people charming, magnetic. We say they have a gift with people. And in a way, they do. They've simply redirected that gift entirely toward one purpose, getting what they want, at whatever cost to everyone around them. But here's the thing about a person like that. There's a ceiling to what charm alone can accomplish, and when the lies stop working, when the money runs out, when the courts stop buying the story, they don't reassess, they don't back down, they don't walk away. They escalate. This is the story of Tracy Richter, a woman who spent 20 years proving that there is no line she wouldn't cross, no person she wouldn't destroy, and no story she couldn't rewrite. And the one detective who, after a decade of watching her get away with it, finally made her answer for all of it. Tracy Richter, born Tracy Rohr in Chicago, 1966, was, by every outward appearance, exactly what she claimed to be at any given moment. A devoted nurse, a loving wife, a protective mother, a wronged woman, a devout Christian, a victim. She wore each identity like a costume, switching between them with seamless precision depending on what the room required, what the man needed, and what the story demanded. On the night of December 13th, 2001, in the small Iowa town of Early, population 500, Tracy shot her 20-year-old neighbor 9 times, including 3 bullets into the back of his skull while he lay face down on the floor. She then walked downstairs, planted fabricated evidence in his car, rubbed pantyhose across her own neck to simulate strangulation marks, and told police she was a hero who had saved her children. And for almost a decade, it almost worked. But this story doesn't begin in Early, Iowa. It begins in a Chicago hospital in 1987 with a young doctor who thought he'd found the woman of his dreams. And it runs through 2 marriages, 2 divorces, a web of extortion schemes, a murder-for-hire plot, a forged journal, a fake British accent, a plastic bag pressed over a man's face in the middle of the night, and a body count that extends far beyond 1 bedroom floor in 1 small Iowa town. By the end of this, you'll understand how a person like Tracy operates at the highest level, and what it costs the people who never see it coming. This is the full story. Every scheme, every victim, every lie. In order. Before we go back to the beginning, there's one detail I need to plant in your mind. It's a small pink spiral notebook. 6 handwritten pages found in a dead man's car on the night of December 13th, 2001. Investigators kept its existence completely secret, known only to them, and, they believed, to one other person. The killer. They were wrong about that second part, and when the truth about that notebook finally surfaced, 8 years later, it unraveled everything. We'll get there, but first you need to understand the woman who created it. Chicago, 1987. Tracy Richter is 20 years old, working at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She's striking. Thick dark hair, green eyes, the kind of presence that makes people look twice. She knows it. She uses it. John Pittman is 30, a medical student in his 4th year at Northwestern. By his own description, he's average-looking but hard-working and intelligent. He catches a glimpse of Tracy across the hospital one night and is immediately captivated. She is, in his words, like someone who belonged in an 80s rock video rather than a hospital corridor. He makes a point of talking to her whenever their paths cross. She is distant at first, unbothered, politely indifferent. She has more male attention than she knows what to do with. And then one night, something shifts. She's in a mood. He catches the edge of it. She snaps at him, verbally, harshly, inappropriately given the hierarchy between them. He walks away mid-tirade, refuses to engage. The next night she seeks him out, apologizes, tells him she got nasty and she's sorry. He's intrigued. He asks her out. She agrees. They go on a double date. She sleeps with him that same night. Later, to her friends, she'll deny this ever happened. It would have been impossible, she'll say. She still lived with her parents at the time. It's the first rewrite of reality. Small, harmless seeming. But notice the instinct. When a version of events doesn't serve the image she wants to project, she simply changes it. And she says it so naturally that people around her don't even notice the seam. John asks her out again, as they go out a few more times. After the 3rd date, he finds a note she's left him. She thinks she might be falling in love with him. John doesn't feel that. Not even close. To him, this is physical attraction he figures he'll eventually work out of his system. But Tracy is already several moves ahead. She tells him she loves being around an older, intelligent man who is in control and has his act together. She makes herself indispensable to his ego. What she actually finds attractive, those around her will later reflect, is the idea of being a doctor's wife. More specifically, a rich doctor's wife. Here's what everyone who knew Tracy in those years noticed. She was a chameleon. Every interest John had, she developed. Every preference he expressed, she adopted. And she morphed her personality around his praise and his criticism in real time. She played the damsel, confessed to growing up unloved by a cold father, to craving sympathy, to needing to be rescued. She performed vulnerability so convincingly that he mistook it for intimacy. It wasn't. It was calibration. She was building the version of herself that would keep him hooked. John leaves Chicago for Virginia to complete medical training. Tracy floods him with love letters, effusive, detailed, aching. He invites her to come join him. She agrees enthusiastically, then gets cold feet. Doesn't want to defy her parents. John drives to Chicago with a friend to pick her up. They get a hotel. The next morning, she calls. She's changed her mind. She's ready to go. He's confused, embarrassed. His friend is already regretting this trip. And then he meets Tracy's mother. Her mother is fully supportive of the move. Warm, encouraging. The complete opposite of the tearful, disapproving parents Tracy had described. She promises to come collect Tracy herself if it doesn't work out. John files this discrepancy away. He doesn't know what to do with it yet. They move to Virginia. Tracy immediately announces she wants to go back to Chicago. By now, John is utterly in love with her and willing to do almost anything to make her stay. Which is, of course, precisely what Tracy wanted. From that day forward, she does everything possible to separate him from every friend and family member who might offer him a perspective other than hers. She threatens to leave constantly, not because she means it, but because it works. The uncertainty keeps him desperate to please. Well, if you want to understand Tracy Richter, understand this. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a hostage who believed he was in a relationship. John's parents own a condo in Vail, Colorado. He invites friends and their girlfriends to join him and Tracy on a ski vacation. Several of the women already know Tracy. They describe her uniformly as emotional, erratic, manipulative, and unstable. Someone who is never happy unless she is in complete control of every situation. Tracy has never skied before. John hires an instructor for the newer skiers so they can learn while the advanced group takes on harder runs. Tracy refuses the lessons. On the third day, John finds Tracy crying in the condo. She feels ignored, rejected, left behind. She feels like the entire group is alienating her because she can't ski at his level. And then she gets in a screaming match with one of his friends. He calls her a crybaby. She responds by striking him across the face hard enough to knock his glasses off and leave a mark. John grabs her, breaks it up. He's humiliated. To fix it, he offers to ski the easier hills with her for the rest of the vacation. Tracy gets her way. Several of John's friends refuse to spend another night under the same roof as her and leave early. On the second to last day, John steals away for a few more challenging runs with whoever is left. They return to find Tracy seething, screaming at everyone for not including her, for making her feel useless and unwanted. People find themselves apologizing to her. They don't fully understand why. To finally restore peace, John takes Tracy shopping for a condo of their own. Yet he's planning his residency in Colorado and figures the real estate will give her something to invest in. It works. She calms down. If you have to buy property to survive a ski vacation, you are not on vacation. You are in a hostage negotiation with better scenery. They marry in 1988. John finishes his residency at the University of Colorado. And almost immediately, Tracy begins the quiet, methodical work of separating him from every connection he has outside of her. His parents, his friends, all of it. Then John's parents discover their credit cards have been stolen. Over $15,000 in furniture and home accessories has been charged, delivered to their Vail condo, and systematically redirected. When police begin narrowing down suspects, there are two, Tracy's decorator and Tracy. Except the stolen furniture keeps turning up in John and Tracy's home. Tracy volunteers to help investigate. She becomes the police liaison, charming, cooperative, deeply concerned. His parents hire a private investigator. The PI reaches the same conclusion as law enforcement. When John confronts Tracy, she doesn't cry. She doesn't confess. She explodes. She becomes belligerent, furious, not at herself, but at his parents for accusing her. They become the villains. From that day forward, she refuses to be in the same room as them. The woman who committed the theft acts as though she is the wronged party, and she maintains that position so consistently, with such genuine seeming outrage, that it creates doubt where there should be none. Notice the pattern. It's going to repeat. She commits. She gets caught. And she responds with fury at the people who exposed her. The victim becomes the aggressor in her retelling. And anyone who doesn't immediately accept that retelling becomes a conspirator against her. Meanwhile, at home, things are deteriorating in ways that John is only beginning to understand. He comes home one night to find Tracy screaming at their infant son and physically shaking him. She's frustrated that she isn't producing enough breast milk, and she's taking it out on the baby. John intervenes and switches Bert to formula, quietly deciding it's safer for everyone. He is learning who he married. Slowly. Too slowly. While John is working 100-hour weeks trying to build a medical career, Tracy is filling her free time with a side business. I need you to take a second with this one. But Tracy had developed a scheme in which she would seduce married men, wait until they fell asleep, expose herself next to them, photograph the scene, and then demand $2,500 to keep the photos from their wives. She called it a side hustle. Technically accurate. It is also extortion, predatory, and something that once you know about it reframes every other thing she ever did. Because the skill set required to execute that scheme, the seduction, the patience, the documentation, the leverage, the confident delivery of the demand, is not the skill set of someone who acts impulsively. It's the skill set of someone who plans several moves ahead, who views other people as resources to be extracted from, and who has no meaningful moral floor. She was doing this while married, while being a mother, while complaining that John wasn't spending enough time at home. But there's more. Tracy began having blatant affairs. Multiple men. Buying them lavish gifts, new skis, weekend getaways, all on John's credit cards. When he'd confront her, she'd deny it, or tell him the cards had been stolen. He tracked down one of the men directly. The man confirmed he and Tracy had been dating for 4 months. He had no idea she was married. Then John found a canceled check for thousands of dollars in sex toys, oils, and lubricants. Tracy explained she was starting a new business and needed them for inventory. He later discovered she was selling these items to friends and to strip clubs, which was also how she'd befriended most of the male strippers she was sleeping with. And she stole John's prescription pad and forged prescriptions in the names of various men. She had been requesting steroids for her uncle, and when John refused, citing his medical license, she took matters into her own hands. She fraudulently signed an application to increase John's life insurance policy, without his knowledge. And then John hired a private investigator. The PI begins following Tracy. What he finds is alarming enough that he starts recommending full-time surveillance. Tracy has been spending time with what he describes as rough-looking bodybuilder types, connected, the PI believes, to criminal elements. Around this same time, Tracy begins demanding that John come home to their apartment to have an important conversation. The PI calls John while he's already in his car, heading there. But he tells him to stop driving, go somewhere public, wait for instructions. The PI goes to John's apartment instead. He has already overheard enough of a conversation to know what is waiting there. Several men. A plan. They intend to inject John with illegal narcotics and stage it as an overdose. John parks at a diner. His phone rings. It's Tracy. "I'm here. Where are you? Please, hurry home." He doesn't go home. That is a sentence that may have saved his life. The marriage ends. John moves back to Chicago and files for divorce, finalized in 1996. And Tracy, who has never once, in any situation, accepted a loss gracefully, pivots immediately to the next phase: destruction. Tracy's plan to annihilate John Pittman through the legal system is methodical and relentless. While she files false allegations of sexual abuse against him with Child Protective Services, she coaches young Bert, who is 6 years old at the start of this, then 7, then 8. To give statements that support her version, investigators who speak with Bert note that he looks to Tracy before answering every question. The coaching is visible to everyone in the room. Tracy takes it further. She has flyers printed, using explicit language that I won't repeat, alleging that Dr. John Pittman, a physician at his hospital, sexually abuses children. She places these flyers on cars in the hospital parking lot. She does this to the father of her child. At his workplace. John takes a polygraph. He passes. CPS investigates. He's cleared. He takes another polygraph. Passes again. He is publicly and officially cleared of every allegation. But he is granted joint custody in the 1996 divorce, with Bert primarily residing with Tracy. The custody battle doesn't end. It won't end for years. Tracy has found a weapon, and she intends to keep using it. Tracy meets the dentist. We'll call him Dr. L at his request, sometime around 1996. He runs a practice in Chicago. He has a business credit card, and, as it turns out, a threshold for disbelief that Tracy finds extremely workable. She talks her way into doing some freelance IT work for his office. Setting up a computer system, she says. She takes months to deliver a computer she claims to be configuring at her house. During that time, she is openly flirting with him every time she's in the office. Eventually, he asks her out. She begins borrowing money. $200, $500, $1,000. She always pays it back. Yet he trusts her. She asks him to sign blank pieces of paper in 3 different pen sizes. For office correspondence, she says, to streamline paperwork when he's in surgery. He signs them without reading them. He now has no idea what those signatures will be used for. He will find out. She has a car accident and needs to borrow $18,000 for the insurance settlement. He gives it to her. She charges a round-trip ticket to Australia on his business credit card. When he tries to dispute it, the credit card company tells him they can't reverse the charge. They received a fax from his office with his signature authorizing the purchase. He now understands what those blank signed papers were for. Then comes the strangest part. Tracy proposes a fantasy. Sex while both of them are under nitrous oxide in the exam room. But he agrees, and later told investigators with notable candor that he was, at that moment, thinking with the wrong brain. She administers the nitrous. Then she administers an IV of Versed, a surgical sedative, telling him he isn't high enough. He agrees to this. He loses consciousness. When he wakes up, his scrubs are still double-tied. Nothing happened. But there is a Band-Aid on his arm, where the IV had been. Whatever she was doing while he was unconscious, it wasn't what she'd promised. And the next week, Tracy flew to Australia, on the dentist's fraudulently charged ticket. She had been corresponding online with a man named Michael Roberts. He's a few years younger than her, a computer engineer, a born-again Christian with blue eyes and an Australian accent. They met on a Christian singles forum, and Tracy tells Michael she was a virgin when she married John. She hasn't been with anyone since. She doesn't believe in premarital sex. 18 days after they meet face to face, they are married. In Australia. She hasn't even returned to Chicago yet. She told this born-again Christian man, while, remember, she was running an extortion ring photographing married men in compromising positions, that she was a virgin who believed in waiting for marriage. Let that settle for a second. When Tracy returns to Chicago, she sends Dr. L a document. It bears his signature, one of the ones he signed on that blank page. And it tells a story. According to this settlement agreement, Dr. L admitted to sedating Tracy during a dental procedure, removing her clothing, placing her in red thigh-high stockings, stiletto heels 2 sizes too small, photographing her and assaulting her while she was unconscious. The document is specific, graphic, and horrifying. In lieu of pressing criminal charges, the document states, Tracy agrees to accept $150,000, a 2-carat round diamond ring, and a 3-carat diamond tennis bracelet. The $18,000 loan she never repaid? Already counted as the first payment, Dr. L refuses to pay. He never reports the extortion. Tracy never reports the alleged assault, because to do so would require telling that story under oath, which is not a risk she is willing to take. Instead, she tearfully confesses to her brand-new husband, Michael, that she has been violated by a monster. He believes her completely. He promises to protect her always. And he contacts John Pittman and tells him he is despicable and that he will spend every last cent he has making sure John never harms his stepson again. Michael Roberts, a genuinely decent man who has just been handed a completely fabricated reality, is now fully recruited into Tracy's war. Same playbook. New player. New soldier. 1998. Tracy convinces Michael to permanently relocate from Australia to a small town in Iowa called Early. Population under 500. Everybody knows everybody. Doors go unlocked. She has researched it, she says, as an idyllic place to raise children. They find a beautiful Victorian home. Their realtor, Mona Weedy, becomes one of their first friends in town. Mona is warm, cheerful, community-minded. She starts working part-time for Michael's IT business in the mornings, and Mona has a son. His name is Dustin. I need to stop here, because this is the part of the story that matters most. Dustin Weedy was born in late summer 1981. The firstborn child that Mona and her husband Brett had dreamed about. He was bright and curious as a little boy, and his parents marveled at every milestone. But as Dustin grew, it became clear that the world wasn't always kind to him. He had a hard time at school. He was bullied, relentlessly, daily, without mercy. His nickname, the one the kids had given him, was Freak Boy. He retreated. The basement, video games. The virtual world was safer than the real one, where you could be anything you wanted and no one could call you names for it. His mother took him to doctor after doctor. Different diagnoses, different labels, conflicting opinions. In hindsight, Mona believes he was on the spectrum and gifted, a kid who belonged in a different kind of classroom, not the special education track the school had put him on. She fought to get him moved into a gifted program. The school said no. One day, Dustin looked at his mother and asked her, "What's wrong with me?" The weight of those words, she would say later, broke her heart. Because the answer was nothing. Nothing was wrong with him. He was her son. He just needed someone to see him. Dustin liked computers. He loved video games. He liked impersonating Elvis, which made his family laugh. He dreamed of studying computer science at Iowa State University. He was a gentle person. His family would later struggle to name the handful of times in his entire life that he had lost his temper. He graduated high school in May of 2000, and he was 20 years old. He was figuring out his future. And then Michael Roberts took him under his wing. They went to church together. They played paintball. Michael was patient and interested and didn't treat Dustin like a problem to be managed. Dustin adored him. He trusted Michael's family completely. That trust is what killed him. The walls closing in. By late 2001, Tracy and Michael's marriage is deteriorating badly. Affairs, screaming fights, police calls. On one occasion, Michael is arrested for domestic violence. His version is that he physically restrained Tracy to stop her from kicking holes in drywall near an electrical heating unit. Tracy's version is assault. She calls the police. He gets arrested. She takes him back. The cycle continues. Meanwhile, Bert, now 11, is being used as a legal instrument. And he gives statements that have to be walked back, retracted, corrected, because they create legal complications for Tracy when they inadvertently damage her custody case. His testimony is actively managed. And two critical deadlines are approaching in December 2001. The first, Tracy is scheduled to be deposed in her civil lawsuit against Dr. L, the dentist extortion case. The defense has discovered evidence that she fabricated the entire assault story and is preparing to countersue her for extortion. The deposition will be catastrophic. The lies will be exposed. Michael will learn what his wife actually is. The second, 2 days later, Tracy is scheduled to be deposed in John Pittman's custody case for Bert. She is expected to lose. John is about to win custody, which means the child support stops. Both cases. Same week. Yet the walls were closing in from two directions simultaneously. Tracy had been in corners before. She always found a way out. This time she chose the most extreme exit possible. And she chose a pawn. Thursday, December 13th, 2001. Early, Iowa. It is a cold, Midwestern December, the kind where the sky goes gray before 4 o'clock and the temperature drops like a stone after dark. In the town of Early, so small it sits at the intersection of just two highways, so tight-knit that unlocked doors are still the norm, the evening looks ordinary from the outside. In the Roberts house, a crock pot has been simmering all day. Michael is out of town on a business trip. 11-year-old Bert and his younger brother Noah are upstairs, watching Spy Kids in Bert's bedroom. 22-month-old Mason is getting her bath. And at approximately 4 in the afternoon, Tracy's friend Marie Friedman arrives. Both their husbands are away. They had planned a sleepover for tonight. Tracy seems surprised to see her, flustered. She makes an excuse, something about Bert's baseball schedule, and sends Marie away. Prosecutor Ben Smith will later theorize about what was happening in that house when Marie knocked on the door. He believes Dustin Weedy was already upstairs, and he believes he wasn't there by choice. Outside, in the Roberts driveway, sits a car that anyone in Early would immediately recognize. It belongs to Dustin Weedy. At 7 p.m., the phone rings at the Sac County Sheriff's Department. The caller is a child.
Somebody came to the house, and they tied her up, and they were choking her. My mom got the gun and shot the other one ran off.
Deputies from the Sac County Sheriff's Department arrive to find Tracy Roberts, age 35, shaking and traumatized, her 3 children clustered around her. They move through the house, past the simmering crock-pot, up the stairs. On the bedroom floor, in a pool of blood, is 20-year-old Dustin Weedy. He has been shot 9 times. In his back pocket, a pen. He came to this house without a weapon. Tracy is rushed to the hospital 12 miles away, where she tells her story to the investigators gathered around her bed. She is calm, detailed, coherent. She was giving Mason a bath, she says. She heard a noise downstairs, assumed it was Michael coming home early from his trip. She walked toward the stairs. 2 men she didn't recognize were coming up toward her. She ran to Bert's bedroom, threw the baby inside, told Bert to lock the door and not come out no matter what. Before she could get inside herself, the 2 men seized her and dragged her into the master bedroom. They tried to strangle her with a pair of pantyhose that had been drying on the banister. She lost consciousness. She woke to the sound of the men trying to kick in Bert's bedroom door. She ran to the gun safe, an 18-inch space between the bed and the wall, down near the floor. With her wrists bound, barely conscious, she entered 2 codes. She retrieved 2 guns. She fired the Beretta over her shoulder while being dragged by her feet. The safety was on. She tried again. It fired. He fell. She checked her children, told Bert to call 911. Then she saw the man stir. She went back. She fired 3 more shots with the .357 Magnum. She made sure he couldn't come after her family. The second man, she says, fled. 5'11", brown or black hair, mid to late 30s. She never sees him again. It is an extraordinary story. A mother, bound and barely conscious, entering 2 codes into a gun safe, retrieving 2 separate firearms, firing blind over her shoulder in an 18-inch space, hitting her target, all while fighting off 2 men, protecting 3 children, recovering from strangulation-induced unconsciousness. If it's true, Tracy Roberts is the most composed and capable person under pressure who has ever lived. The investigators at the hospital note something else. Tracy is calm. She barely asks about her children. What she wants to discuss, urgently, repeatedly, now in detail, is her ex-husband, John Pittman. She tells them he abducted Bert in 1992, that he'd been cleared of abuse allegations, but she knows what he is, that she was days away from losing their custody case, that she doesn't know exactly how, but she knows that John Pittman is behind what happened tonight. She has already written the ending of the investigation. All the detectives have to do is follow the breadcrumbs she's scattering. Across town, Mona Wade is Christmas shopping. Her phone rings. It's her nephew. Something has happened at the Roberts house. She doesn't know what yet. She drives over. Police barricades. Crime scene tape. The cold air lit with flashing lights. And there, inside the tape, is Dustin's car, in the Roberts driveway. She approaches an officer. She asks if her son is inside that house. The officer says yes. She asks if he is dead. The officer says yes. Just like that. 1 syllable. To a mother standing on a sidewalk at Christmas, in a town where everyone knows everyone's name, Mona drops to her knees on the pavement. The initial assessment of the scene raises questions that the investigators can't quite explain away. No forced entry. The Roberts lock their doors. It's one of the few households in Early that does. But the doors are intact, undamaged. Whoever came in that night walked through a door that was opened for them. No ransacking. $30,000 in jewelry sitting untouched on surfaces throughout the house, the kind of haul a real burglar would have filled their pockets with on the way out. No weapon on the victim. No fingerprints of a second person anywhere in the house. Dustin's car, parked in the driveway, in plain sight. A car Tracy would have recognized in an instant. No forced entry, no weapon, no ransacking, no second set of fingerprints, and a 20-year-old with a pen in his back pocket, shot 9 times. If you're planning a violent home invasion in a town of 500 people, you don't park your car in the victim's driveway. You don't come unarmed, and you don't ignore $30,000 in jewelry. Something is wrong with this picture, and the investigators know it. But in 2001, they don't have enough to charge Tracy, and the case eventually stalls. For 7 years, it goes cold. In 2008, Special Agent Trent Vileta of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation picks up the Dustin Weedy case file and does not put it down for years. And he brings in a young county prosecutor named Ben Smith, who has never tried a murder case, but who takes one look at the evidence and agrees. Something is profoundly wrong here. They start with the medical evidence. Tracy claimed she was strangled with pantyhose, choked hard enough to lose consciousness. The attending physician's notes from the hospital tell a different story. The injury to Tracy's neck is a red abrasion across the front only. No broken blood vessels in the eyes, which are an unavoidable consequence of genuine strangulation severe enough to render someone unconscious. No pressure marks on the sides of the neck, where hands or a ligature would have compressed the carotid arteries. Just a horizontal friction mark, as if something had been rubbed back and forth vigorously across the front of the throat. Whose forensic experts would later testify at trial that you cannot be choked unconscious without those blood vessel ruptures. You can, however, create a convincing-looking red mark by pressing and dragging an abrasive fabric, like pantyhose, across your own neck in a back-and-forth motion. It takes very little effort on soft skin. The jury would later test this themselves. Tracy also claimed she fired a gun over her shoulder in a confined space, both of her eardrums, completely uninjured. No hearing damage whatsoever. But the most damning evidence is the blood. Dustin sustained 9 gunshot wounds from 2 different firearms. Crime scene investigators and forensic analysts examining the blood evidence, specifically, and the difference between fresh blood and coagulated blood, established that there is a minimum of 15 minutes between the first 6 shots and the final 3. 15 minutes. Tracy told investigators she checked on her children, instructed Bert to call 911, saw Dustin stir, and immediately returned to fire the final shots. She said this took less than a minute. 15 minutes is not less than a minute. 15 minutes is a decision. 15 minutes is someone standing in a room, alive and unhurried, making a choice. And then there is the angle of those final 3 shots. The last rounds from the .357 Magnum entered the back of Dustin's skull at a downward trajectory consistent with shots fired from above at a subject who is already on the ground. His head was on the floor. He was not getting up. He was not a credible threat. He was a 20-year-old with a pen in his pocket, already shot 6 times, bleeding out on a bedroom floor. And she stood over him and fired 3 more bullets into the back of his skull. Here's where it gets interesting, because Tracy's account of that night doesn't stay the same. In 2001, she tells investigators that John Pittman, her ex-husband, who is about to win their custody case, arranged the attack. He wanted her dead. He hired Dustin. The notebook in Dustin's car proves it. Find John Pittman, and you'll find your killer. In 2004, after Michael Roberts files for divorce, and the 2 of them are in the middle of a bitter custody battle for their children, Tracy tells investigators she has new information. Actually, she says, it was Michael who arranged it, and he was out of town. That's how he orchestrated it from a distance. And she knows this because Michael confessed to her, in his sleep, while she was there listening. She said her husband confessed to orchestrating a murder while he was asleep, and she was awake, listening and taking note. In 2008, with the case newly reopened and Tracy now separated from Michael and fighting him in family court, she begins sending the investigators emails. Dozens of them. New theories arrive regularly. Perhaps, she now suggests, Michael and Dustin were having a secret affair. That would explain why Dustin would be willing to kill her. Michael wanted her out of the way so they could be together. She also mentions, casually, that Michael had been encouraging Dustin to write stories about being a hitman. 3 versions. 3 suspects. In every single one of them, the person Tracy is currently in the most active legal conflict with. Mona contradicts everything. Mona Weedy tells investigators something that cuts directly through Tracy's account. The day before the shooting, December 12, 2001, Tracy called Mona and asked if Dustin could come over the next day to help with her coffee machine. He was good with equipment like that. Michael would be out of town, she said, but she needed the help. Tracy told investigators she barely knew Dustin, had always been uncomfortable around him, and had been frightened when he showed up at her door that evening asking for money. She'd sent him away and told him to come back Friday when Michael was home. Think about that. But if Tracy was genuinely frightened of Dustin, Frightened enough that she mentioned it to investigators as context for the attack, why did she call his mother the day before and invite him over? Specifically when she knew her husband wouldn't be there? And why would Dustin, if he were planning a violent home invasion, park his recognizable car in the victim's driveway in broad daylight? Investigator Vileta and Prosecutor Smith track down Mary Higgins, Tracy's former close friend, now estranged. Mary tells them she is afraid of Tracy. Has been for years. Smith tells her there's more to this case. He doesn't tell her what. He wants to see what she knows. Mary says, "Do you mean that stupid notebook?" Ben Smith later told reporters he felt physically ill in that moment. Lightheaded. Close to faint. Nobody outside the investigation was supposed to know that notebook existed. It was holdback evidence, deliberately kept secret to test the credibility of anyone who came forward claiming to know about the case. The only person outside law enforcement who should have known about that notebook was the person who created it. Mary tells them everything. Tracy had confided in her, back in 2001, that she wasn't worried about the custody case anymore, because the police had found a notebook in Dustin's car, written in his own handwriting, that described in detail how John Pittman had hired him to kill her and Bert. Case closed. John Pittman would be arrested soon. All her problems would be over. Tracy had described the notebook's contents to Mary in detail. The same details that were in the actual notebook. Why, the holdback notebook, the one that only the killer was supposed to know about. Mary also told them about a conversation she had overheard between Tracy and Bert. Tracy was recounting the events of that night, and Bert, 11 years old, sitting in the same room, said to his mother, "Mom, why did you have to go back and shoot him? You didn't have to do that." Let that stay with you for a moment. An 11-year-old child, watching his mother recount the story, knew that she had gone back. Knew it wasn't necessary. Knew the man had already been shot and was down. He asked her why. That single question from a child, that single sentence, confirmed 15 years of forensic analysis. It matched the blood evidence. It matched the downward angle of the final shots. It matched the 15-minute gap between wound sets. And Bert Pittman had been in that house. He had seen or heard something that night that told him his mother made a choice. And at 11 years old, he didn't understand it. The pink notebook revealed. Here is what Smith believes happened on the afternoon of December 13th, 2001. Marie Friedman arrived at the house around 4 p.m. and found Tracy surprised to see her. Smith believes Dustin was upstairs at that point, not willingly. Tracy made an excuse and got Marie to leave. When Dustin was finally alone with her, she had a gun. She told him what to write. The pink spiral notebook is not Dustin's confession. It is Tracy's script, taken down in Dustin's handwriting at gunpoint. The phrases in it, the descriptions of John Pittman, the specific details of his background, his habits, his alleged motives, are lifted almost verbatim from depositions Tracy had given in her own custody proceedings. Language that Dustin Weedy had no possible way to know. Language that only Tracy would know. Language that appears in Tracy's own legal documents. She dictated it to him. She made him write it in his own hand. A confession. A frame. A story with a beginning, a middle, and an ending where John Pittman goes to prison and both custody cases collapse. Then she pointed the gun at the 20-year-old who had come to her house because she asked him to, who had looked up to her husband as a mentor, who had trusted this family completely. And she shot him. And when he was down, but not dead, she waited 15 minutes, walked back into that room, pressed the gun to the back of his skull, and made sure he couldn't tell anyone what had actually happened. She planted the notebook in his car. She went back inside. She created the marks on her own neck. She waited for Bert to call 911. And then she performed. But the damage didn't stop with Dustin. Dustin Weedy died on a bedroom floor at 20 years old, having lived most of his short life feeling like an outsider, finally finding someone who made him feel seen, and then being used by that person as a prop in a murder scheme before being executed to silence him. He wanted to study computers. He wanted a future. He never got one. His father, Brett Weedy, tried to hold himself together in the months that followed. He and Mona would sit together at night, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand how their son, their gentle, funny, once-a video game-playing son, had been portrayed in the media and in Tracy's stories as a violent home invader who came to kill a woman and her children. It was unrecognizable to them. It was a character in a story that had nothing to do with the child they raised. Thanksgiving Day, 2002. Almost exactly 1 year after Dustin's death. A man is found in the cemetery. Brett Weedy is lying at the base of his son's headstone. His arms are wrapped around it. He has shot himself through the heart. His note says his grief consumed him, that he had cried every single day since Dustin died, that he wanted to be with his son. 2 bodies. Same cause. One pulled the trigger on December 13th, 2001. The other pulled it on Thanksgiving, 2002, in a cemetery in Iowa, with his arms around a headstone. Both deaths trace back to the same person. Was Mona learned about Brett the same way she had learned about Dustin, from a phone call delivered with blunt, casual cruelty. It was the local funeral director. He said, "So you know I have Brett." Mona didn't know. She asked why he had Brett. He said, "Brett took his life." Can you imagine? Can you sit with what that moment was like for a woman who had already lost her son, who had spent a year being looked at sideways in a small town where everyone knew everyone, who had watched her husband fall apart, grief by grief, day by day, and then received that news like that? Like a piece of administrative information? This family, the Weedys, lost their son, then their father, then their home. The pain became too much. Mona, Dustin's sister Ashley, his sister Brianna, they packed up and left early Iowa entirely, moved to Minnesota, or started over. Because there was nothing left for them in that town but reminders and people who had believed Tracy's story. 1 month after Brett's suicide, while Mona was still drowning in the most catastrophic year of her life, Tracy wrote her a letter. In it, Tracy accused Mona of conspiring with John Pittman to send Dustin to kill her. She also called Mona a horrible wife to her late husband. I want you to sit with that for a moment. The woman who killed Dustin Weedy, who indirectly destroyed his father, who drove his entire family from their home, 1 month after the father's suicide, wrote his mother a letter accusing her of being complicit in the murder and criticizing her as a wife. There is no bottom to this. Bert grew up weaponized. From the age of 6, he was a legal instrument in his mother's hands. His statements were coached, managed, retracted, and rewritten to serve her needs. By the time of the trial, he is an adult, and he shows up to testify for Tracy with a tattoo on his body depicting the home invasion, his mother portrayed as a heroic defender saving her children. He has changed his name to Bert Richter, his mother's maiden name. He maintains a Facebook page dedicated to her innocence. He doesn't know what was taken from him. He can't fully know. She started taking it when he was 6 years old, and she never stopped. And Michael Roberts, who had believed he was protecting a wronged Christian woman and fighting for their family, Michael gave an interview years later about what Tracy had actually done to him toward the end of their marriage.
December of 2000, Tracy assaulted me, physically assaulted me, and I told her at that point I was going to file for divorce. And 45 minutes later, I was in handcuffs. She attempted to murder me. Several times.
How did you do that?
I had been systematically drugged over a period of time, I think maybe a minimum of a week, maybe a little bit more. And I thought I was having some sort of breakdown. I was off with the fairies. I did not know whether I was in reality or a dream state. And she said she wanted to do a trust exercise with me. And I thought, that's like fall over backwards, she'll catch me. And I'm like, you know, whatever's going to save this marriage. And she had rolled me up in a king-size cotton sheets. And when I woke up, I was in like a cocoon state. And she was sitting on top of me, and I had a plastic bag over my head. And she asked me to take deep breaths until I pass out. She would then take the bag off my head. I would wake up, and I would trust her forever because I would know that she could have killed me, and yet she did.
This is what she did to a man she had been married to for years, in their home, while their children were somewhere in that house. This is who existed behind the costume. Michael eventually won full custody of Noah and Mason and relocated to Australia, but not before years of legal warfare, restraining orders, and harassment campaigns. Prosecutor Ben Smith went on record to say that Michael and his children needed a level of protection that essentially amounted to witness protection on another continent. "She's dangerous," Smith told a reporter, "and everybody keeps underestimating her." July 26, 2011. Tracy is asked to meet an FBI agent at a local Starbucks in Omaha to discuss her case. She agrees. But first, and this detail matters, she drives through the parking lot multiple times, circling, checking. Counter-surveillance, making sure it isn't a trap. It is a trap. As she begins to drive away, she is pulled over and taken into custody. When police conduct their search, they find something in her possession. Paperwork for a name change. She was in the process of becoming someone new. On the name she had chosen, Heidi Johanna Frostbacher. Heidi Frostbacher is the name of Michael Roberts' new wife. She was arrested for first-degree murder, and her first concern was still the identity fraud campaign against her ex-husband's new family. She is charged with murder in the first degree. A Class A felony. Mandatory sentence if convicted. Life without the possibility of parole. The trial begins October 24th, 2011. Tracy arrives daily dressed what observers describe as the sexy librarian. Hair up, glasses, fitted clothing. She is engaged to a man who sits in the courtroom every day. She blows him kisses. She mouths, "I love you," across the room. She pleads not guilty. Prosecutor Smith lays out the case with surgical clarity. This was not a home invasion. It was a staged production with one director, one unwilling actor, and a carefully manufactured piece of evidence designed to send an innocent man to prison. He walks the jury through the timing. 2 depositions. Same week. Both of them catastrophic for Tracy. The home invasion happened in the exact window that would derail both legal proceedings and transform Tracy from defendant to victim in the eyes of her husband. He shows them the phrases in the pink notebook, phrases that appear verbatim in Tracy's own deposition transcripts. Language that a 20-year-old with no connection to the case couldn't possibly have known. Language that belongs to Tracy. He walks them through the 15-minute blood evidence gap, the downward angle of the final shots, the absent eardrum damage, the friction not strangulation neck wound. He explains the holdback evidence, and he explains that Mary Higgins, a woman Tracy had counted as a close friend, told investigators about that stupid notebook before investigators told her, that she described its contents, that she recounted Tracy's own words. I stood over him and shot him in the head until he stopped moving. And then he tells them about Bert, 11 years old, sitting with his mother, asking her, Mom, why did you have to go back and shoot him? You didn't have to do that. The defense argues the home invasion was real, the self-defense was justified, and Tracy Richter is a mother who did what any mother would do to save her children. They present Bert, now an adult, tattooed with his mother's heroism, as their star witness. He testifies in detail. He is compelling. He loves his mother. Tracy's explanation for knowing about the notebook? Does Michael confess to her in his sleep? He told her, while unconscious and dreaming, about top-secret holdback evidence that even his own attorney didn't know existed. While she was there listening. And taking notes. The jury deliberates with extraordinary care. They are given the actual guns. They take turns climbing into a recreation of the 18-inch gun safe space. They lay on their stomachs. They try to replicate Tracy's story, entering codes, retrieving 2 weapons, firing over the shoulder. One juror, close to Tracy's size, can barely hold the gun steady with one hand. Cannot imagine firing it accurately blindly over her shoulder at a moving target. They take the pantyhose, they apply it to their own necks, and it takes almost no effort to produce a red friction mark identical to what the hospital photographed on Tracy's neck. And they cannot get past one question. If you have just survived a home invasion, if there is allegedly still a second violent intruder somewhere out there, if your children are upstairs, why would you go downstairs and unload one of your guns onto the kitchen counter? Tracy had done exactly that. On November 4th, 2011, the jury returns its verdict.
Verdict form number 1, we the jury find the defendant, Tracy Ann Richter, guilty of the crime of murder in the first instance. That's your verdict. The defense counsel wish to call the verdict.
Guilty. Murder in the first degree. December 5th, 2011. Sentencing. Mona Weda addresses the court. She speaks about Dustin, who he was, what he deserved, what was taken from him. She speaks about Brett. She speaks about the years of fighting to be believed, the years of being dismissed, but the long patience required to wait for justice when no one around you seems to believe that justice is coming. Tracy speaks too. She looks at Mona and says,
I've gone through every what-if in my head and every possible scenario on how things maybe could have ended up differently. I do believe that you deserve justice. I really do. But I didn't murder your son.
Even now, even here, still performing, still the wronged woman, still auditioning for a role the jury has already rejected. Tracy Ann Richter is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Tracy Richter is currently incarcerated at the Iowa Correctional Institution for Women. Every appeal she has filed has been denied. She did not stop from inside a prison cell. She found a convicted child rapist named Jim Landa in a Wisconsin facility and struck up a correspondence. But in one of their letters that investigators later described as deeply disturbing, she included Michael Roberts' full name, social security number, date of birth, and physical description. The implication in the letter was clear enough that it had to be treated as a potential threat. Michael and his children, who had finally made it back to Australia after years of legal siege, needed to be protected all over again. She used a website called Rip Off Report to systematically destroy the reputations of witnesses, prosecutors, and anyone who testified against her. A site where a false accusation costs the accused party $2,000 to attempt to remove. She sent a letter to Mona Weedy accusing her of conspiracy. Tracy's own mother filed a lawsuit against prosecutor Ben Smith on Tracy's behalf. Ben Smith's response, given in an interview, was characteristically direct. The public doesn't even know half of what Tracy is capable of, and even behind bars, she still remains a danger to others. What was the final cost? Dustin Weedy was 20 years old. He wanted to study computers at Iowa State. He liked to make his family laugh. He was finally starting to find his footing in the world. He never got there. Brett Weedy was a father who loved his son so completely that losing him broke something that couldn't be repaired. He died with his arms around his son's grave on Thanksgiving Day. Mona Weedy lost her son, her husband, and the town she had called home for 20 years. She rebuilt her life somewhere else, because there was no rebuilding it where she was. Michael Roberts spent years fighting to get his children to safety. He's surviving a near suffocation and living under protection on a different continent. He lost years he can never get back. Bert grew up as a legal instrument. His reality was constructed by his mother before he was old enough to understand what was being constructed. He carries a tattoo on his body that commemorates a lie. He may never know that. And John Pittman, the man Tracy tried to frame for murder, the man she had flyers printed about, the man she accused of unspeakable things for years, lived with the damage to his reputation and his relationship with his son for decades. He is the reason the notebook said what it said. The frame she built around him. In the end, Tracy Richter was not a woman who snapped. She was not a woman who made a terrible decision under pressure. She was a woman who, from the moment she identified what she wanted from you, began calculating how to extract it, and from the moment you became an obstacle, began calculating how to remove you. She lied. She stole. She extorted. She forged. She framed. She assaulted. She drugged. She murdered. She did all of this across decades, to dozens of people, in different states, under different names, wearing different costumes. And she never stopped. Not after the first arrest. Not after the divorce. Not after the conviction. Not after the cell door closed. Some people don't just lie. They become the lie. And they keep becoming it, long after everyone who loved them has paid the price.